was then dropped by Elektra for good reason, because I was a failure of an artist as of 1997. And Daniel Miller never dropped an artist. In the entire history of Mute Records, he's never once dropped an artist. Well, artists have left, but he's never terminated a contract. That's why Lloyd Rice, head of the Church of Satan, is still signed to Mute Records.
And probably a good record label for you guys to remember to try to get signed to.
An example of how bad things were on the Animal Rights tour. We played a show in Paris. It was a punk rock venue that held 125 people. We sold 70 tickets. By the end of the show, there were 20 people in the audience. Yeah, it was so depressing.
Well, you kind of have your ups and downs with the press as well. So, you know, with this record, I mean, was previous to this, was the press always on your side? Did it feel like you could do no wrong, or was it kind of back and forth then? And did this record come out in the press love it, or did they hate everything before and then love animal rights? I mean, how was your relationship?
The early 90s, when I was making predominantly electronic music, the press didn't really pay attention because it was underground electronic music. And I mean, in the UK, other countries they did, but in the States, like Spin, sort of were interested, but like the mainstream music press, electronic music to them wasn't real music. And then in 95, as I said, Everything Is Wrong was Spin's album of the year, and it was the Village Voice album of the year, so the press were sort of on my side. And then I put out Animal Rights, and to put it in perspective, Rolling Stone gave it 2 out of 10 stars.
Wow.
And the journalist who wrote it was a friend of mine.
Wow. Maybe you felt like you could then, you know?
She actually called me and she said, "I'm so sorry, I have to be honest, I just hate this record."
Wow. So, I mean, at that point, I mean, that can't feel good.
No, but it didn't feel bad. It was depressing, but it just made me think, okay, time to keep going, time to keep making music. There was never that question of, oh, should I stop making music?
Right.
It's just like, okay.
What's next?
Yeah, what's next?
So then, what was next?
Well then, I had a meeting with my manager, and he said, very diplomatically, he said, you know, the punk rock music you make is okay. He said, but people really like your electronic music. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, he's right. And so I thought to myself, like, I love so many different types of music. Why not make a more sort of like emotional, electronic-based record that I will love, that other people might love, or that maybe other people might like? And so then the album Play came out in 1999, which was sort of inspired by that conversation.
So with Play, it wasn't, you know, obviously it's a huge album now, but at first, once again, love affair with the press. I mean, or lack of. I mean, how did that go over? I mean, somewhere I read Melody Maker didn't give it a very good review.
They went out of business a month after they gave me a bad review. Yeah. So that's,
we're starting to see some real power here.
Yeah, no, it was ignored. Most people, when Play first came out, I went on tour playing to 100 people a night. The first show on the Play tour was for 35 people in the basement of a record store in Union Square in New York. But then it just kept building and building and building and building, and it became this crazy record. We're selling like 100,000 records a week.
So, you know, one of the things that seemed like you weren't getting played on the radio, but your songs just kept getting licensed over and over again. And that's something, you know, even with the lip side, we've kind of used that as a way to, like, we're not going to get played on the radio, so sometimes maybe the only way people will hear our songs is a movie or on a TV commercial or something like that. We've never been very precious about that. I mean, when the licenses started, the request for those started coming through for you, was that something you ever were like, I don't know if I want to do an ad for a car or whatever, you know?
Well, the sort of, okay, 1995, Range Rover came to me and they wanted to license a piece of music for one of their commercials, and the old punk rocker in me wanted to be like, fuck you, Range Rover. And then I thought to myself, I had this little thought, I was like, okay, walk in to the Greenpeace offices and I say to the head of Greenpeace, man, Range Rover came to me and they wanted to pay me $150,000 for one of my songs. And I said, fuck you, Range Rover. He'd be like, that's cool. And I thought to myself, if I walked in and said, here's $150,000, he'd be a lot happier. And that was when I sort of realized, generally it's better to take money from corporations than give money to corporations. So that informed, that was kind of part of my ethos behind licensing. Like I won't license music, I'm a vegan for 27 years, I won't license music to any company that exploits animals or serves animals. I won't license music to defense, like people who make guns, maybe in the wrong state to say that.
That's okay, there's not a lot of TV commercials for those people, so yeah.
Yeah, Northrop Grumman are not like, buying big spots in the middle of The Simpsons, like the new B12.
Other than Range Rover, was there ever one where you were just like, no, that did come across the table, you were just like, no way? Adam, besides the Church of Satan.
I'm trying to think. No. Okay, there was one, like a European food company who were making some disgusting food product. And I was like, I just can't in good conscience be involved with that. But the main idea behind licensing was to get the music heard. Because 1999, 2000, like literally, I was not getting played on the radio at all. And it wasn't like, oh, I want to sell more records. It was simply like, I made a record I'm proud of. I'd like